Bats, even though they use echolocation, can see. See you next time on Bet You Didn't Know. Compliments of Sigismund Consultants, Inc.
Drink Pepsi Black for max taste, no sugar. Pepsi Black time, 18 hours.
The news from Guyana, the region and the world. Compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
The news comes to you compliments of KFC. It's finger licking good. With the news, I am Ruth Wilson. Good evening. First, the highlights. The opposition APNU-AFC coalition is defending its desire to sit on the board of the Natural Resource Fund. And 2 men will have to stand a trial in the High Court for the murder of the Henry cousins in late 2022. And in the region, doctors are to determine the cause of the death of several divers in an undersea crude oil pipeline in Trinidad. Details of these and other stories, including international news from the BBC, in a moment.
After a hard day's work, a lime at the workplace would be great, and even greater and better with KFC, with a wide choice of finger-licking meals in a wide range of sizes. Could be a birthday celebration or promotion, or a lime for no reason at all. Any lime, anytime, anywhere is better and tastier with a delicious meal from any of KFC's 9 locations, including the Amazonia Mall at Providence, open now from 9 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. KFC.
It's finger licking good.
And now for the news in detail. Chairman of a Partnership for National Unity, Aubrey Norton, says the opposition coalition will tomorrow, Wednesday, nominate a representative to sit on the governing board of the Natural Resources Fund, NRF. He says the decision has been taken to nominate someone as a board member and a member of the Oversight Committee, although there are concerns that the new Natural Resources Fund Act has not been properly passed.
In the real world of politics, if you leave the Natural Resource Fund without scrutiny, one, you will be excluding yourself from knowing what is happening, and two, you will be making the ground much easier for the PPP to not only continue to expand its corruption. And so we are taking a pragmatic approach which says we will challenge it, we will argue that it hasn't been legally passed until a court decides otherwise. But in the interest of the people of Guyana, we will contribute to a reduction in PPP corruption and to work towards the resources of our people going towards benefiting our people.
The APNU-AFC believes that the new Natural Resource Fund legislation was not passed because the Speaker's mace had not been in the chamber of the National Assembly and several government parliamentarians had not been seated when the bill had been put to a vote. The mace had been removed by several opposition parliamentarians who had been protesting vicariously in the chamber during Finance Minister Ashni Singh's presentation on the new law. The Public Service Ministry today began training more than 12 government supervisors in communication skills. Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of the Public Service, James Cole, says the first training session for this year is aimed at fostering professionalism in the public service. He says the ministry is conducting research to ascertain the training needs.
Also, the introduction of the oil and gas sector and the transformation development within various sectors. The training department has conducted and will continue to conduct on-site survey to identify the gaps needed for the development of our country. Training is very important and critical in the public service. It caters to strengthen the goals as identifying our professional indicators for capacity building. It will also allow the programs to support and improve our overall performance within our work environment to facilitate organizational effectiveness.
That was Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of the Public Service, James Cole. The former head of the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, Dr. Vincent Adams, is insisting that ExxonMobil had taken out a $2.5 billion insurance to cater for oil spillage. This after the company bluntly denied that it had ever agreed with the previous EPA administration about a $2.5 billion insurance. But Dr. Adams is challenging then ExxonMobil Guyana President Rod Henson and the EPA administration to prove him wrong. Dr. Adams recalls successfully demanding insurance to that amount after a series of meetings that had involved the Bank of Guyana, the Insurance Association, and ExxonMobil, which had even submitted proposals on the subject. The former EPA chief said that insurance, which had been obtained in 2019, applied to certain types of occurrences, including an oil spill at any time of the oil fields. The oil fields, in an effort to guard against the limited liability status of Esso Exploration and Production Guyana Limited, Dr. Adams recalled that he had insisted on a letter of assurance from the parent companies, Exxon, Hess, and CNOOC, that they would be fully responsible should there be a spill. ExxonMobil has said that its local subsidiary, Esso Exploration and Production Guyana Limited, have assets worth about $5 billion as of the end of 2020. ExxonMobil Guyana President Alastair Routledge says his company is working with the EPA and its co-venturers to put in place a combined $2 billion of affiliate company guarantees. He says that amount will exceed the equivalent guarantees required by regulators in Canada, the United States, and the United Kingdom. The Guyana Elections Commission today appointed a new legal officer. He is Attorney-at-Law Mr. Kurt Anthony De Silva. He's currently serving the President and judges of the Caribbean Court of Justice as a judicial counsel. Mr. De Silva holds a Master of Laws degree in public law from the University of the West Indies. Shortly after being called to the bar in Guyana in 2017, he served the Chief Justice and other judges of the High Court as a judicial research assistant. The Guyana Elections Commission says, based on his experience in both the CCJ and the Guyana's High Court of researching legal issues, analyzing submissions in cases from attorneys at law, writing legal opinions for judges, and his knowledge of the new rules of procedure and the electoral laws, the Commission appointed Mr. De Silva as the legal officer. Two men will have to face a High Court judge and jury for the murder of the Henry cousins. Blairmont magistrate Peter Hugh today ruled that there was sufficient evidence for 34-year-old Vinod Gopal, called Maga, of Yakusari Blackbush Polder, Quarantine Berbice, and 33-year-old Anil Sanchara, called Dan Pol and Rasta, of the Edward Village, West Coast, Berbice, to be committed to stand trial for the indictable offense. Gopal and Sanchara were jointly charged and remanded to prison on Friday, January 15, 2021 for the murders of teen cousins Isaiah and Joel Henry in the Cotton Tree Back Dam, West Coast, Berbice. The bodies of the cousins were found mutilated one day after they went to pick coconuts in the No. 3 Village Back Dam. A post-mortem found that the two teenage cousins had died of hemorrhage and shock due to multiple incised wounds. The main witness is 21-year-old Akash Singh, called Monkey, who is the younger brother of Anil Sanchara, one of the murder accused. You're still with us on News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. It is 18 hours 9. We now turn to news in the region. The bodies of several divers who were sucked into a 36-inch underwater crude oil pipeline off Pointe-a-Pierre, Trinidad last Friday are to undergo post-mortems. More in this report from TTT News Online.
This investigation will be charged with the responsibility of going in, analyzing what plans were put in place before the job started, what was taking place during this unfortunate and tragic accident.
The bodies of 3 of the 4 divers who were sucked into a 36-inch underwater crude oil pipeline off Pointe-à-Pierre last Friday have been removed to the Forensics Sciences Center. TTT News understands the bodies were taken to forensics this morning and are pending identification and an autopsy to determine the cause of death. The announcement of the recovery made by Paria Fuel Trading Company in a statement on Monday evening. Christopher Boudram, Faisal Kurban, Rishi Nagasa, Kazim Ali Jr. and Yusuf Henry were doing maintenance work on the pipeline when the tragedy occurred last week. Boudram was rescued that same day by diver Ronald Ramuta, a relative to Kurban. He is in stable condition at the San Fernando General Hospital. Attempts to retrieve the 4th body are still ongoing. Meanwhile, Paria Fuel Trading Company is denying that the body of the 4th diver has been found, as is being stated by Oilfield Workers Trade Union Executive Member Ozzy Warwick. Paria says all the affected families continue to be informed with timely updates, and earlier this morning were advised that recovery operations will continue relentlessly until the 4th body is found. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has expressed condolences to the loved ones of the 4 divers who lost their lives while on technical duty at Paria facilities in the Gulf of Paria. Dr. Rowley gave the assurance to the families that nothing will stand in the way of determining how the tragedy occurred. He committed that everything will be professionally executed by Paria and its associates in this matter, starting with the already announced independent investigation involving the best professional and technical expertise available to the country. The Prime Minister called upon citizens to be caring and comforting during this time. 2 recently published studies document 35 new beetle species for the islands of Saba and St. Eustatius. Even with these latest additions, it is still estimated that nearly 3/4 of the beetle population is still unknown. Beetles play a vital role in breaking down natural waste and keeping insects in check, both important roles, especially for small Caribbean islands. Beetles represent some of the tiniest inhabitants of the Dutch Caribbean but play a critical role in the environment. They work as tiny decomposers and are vital in recycling nutrients from dead leaves and natural waste back into the ground. As predators, they can help keep insect populations in check, especially pests like caterpillars and aphids, which can damage crops. At 18:12, we now turn to international news from the BBC.
Hello, I'm David Harper with the BBC News. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has warned that it cannot win the war with Russia on its own, and the West will inevitably have to become involved. He said NATO must rethink its refusal to impose a no-fly zone, which he said was vital to stop Moscow's bombardment of Ukraine.
It is important to know that if Ukraine falls, all those troops will be at the borders of your countries, NATO members' borders, Lithuania, Poland and so on. And there will be the same problem there, and there will be a second round of testing because there will also be provocations.
Mr. Zelensky has spoken on the phone to President Biden. He said they'd agreed on the need to stop Russian aggression as soon as possible. Ukraine says Russia has attacked the main television tower in the capital Kyiv, leaving 5 people dead. Social media footage showed smoke billowing up from the steel tower. The attack took some broadcasts off air and damaged a nearby memorial to the victims of the Nazi Holocaust. Ukraine's defence minister warned that Russia was planning to disrupt communications and then give fake information about a Ukrainian capitulation. Lise Doucette is in Kyiv.
Actually, curfew just came into force again, but even when there's not a curfew, people are dropping underground to basements, to bomb shelters, to bunkers, especially after that warning from Russia's defense minister saying that they're going to hit 2 security installations. The hitting of the TV tower also reminds us, if we needed to be reminded, about the cruel miscalculations and mistakes of war. They went for the TV tower, they hit the Baban Yar Holocaust Memorial, where thousands of Jews were massacred by the Nazis, and yet President Putin calls his special military operation a denazification campaign.
US defense officials say Russia's operation has been slowed by Ukrainian resistance and some of their troops have surrendered, but the crisis is still grave. In its latest assessment of President Putin's invasion, the Pentagon said Russian forces did not yet control the skies, even after 6 days. The major industrial economies have agreed on a coordinated release of oil stockpiles after Russia's invasion of Ukraine pushed the price of crude oil over $100 a barrel. David Bamford has this report.
The International Energy Agency, representing the world's key industrial consumers, agreed to deploy 60 million barrels from its stockpiles to reassure global oil markets there will be no shortfall in supplies because of the Ukraine conflict. Half will come from the US Strategic Petroleum Reserve, with the rest from countries in Europe and Asia. Analysts say intervention was vital, with a fuel market already disrupted by the aftermath of the pandemic even before Russia's military intervention.
David Bamford with that report. You're listening to the latest world news from the BBC. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba has said that China, a key Russian ally, has offered to help mediate a ceasefire with Moscow. Mr. Kuleba said he had a constructive telephone conversation with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. Chinese state television, reporting the talks, made no specific mention of a mediation offer. Sporting sanctions against Russia are widening, with governing bodies from world athletics, tennis, cycling and ice skating all imposing bans. Athletes from both Russia and Belarus, which is helping President Putin with his invasion of Ukraine, will be barred indefinitely from international competition. In tennis, national teams, but not individuals, will be cast out of leading tournaments, as Russell Fuller explains.
The prospect of the new world number one Daniil Medvedev being prevented from competing on tour was always a remote one, but a statement from all governing bodies does stress that those from Russia and Belarus can play on at this time. As their nationalities will be removed from scoreboards and websites, Ukraine's Elina Svitolina says she is now happy to play Russia's Anastasia Potapova in Monterrey later. October's Kremlin Cup in Moscow has been suspended, and with their ITF membership also frozen, as things stand, Russia will not be able to defend their Davis Cup and Billie Jean King Cup titles in November.
The Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said he won't impose any economic sanctions on Russia over its invasion of Ukraine. He said he wanted to maintain good relations with all the governments of the world. Ukraine's ambassador to Israel is calling on Israeli officials to stop refusing entry to refugees from his country. Yevgen Kornichuk said dozens of Ukrainian nationals arriving at Ben Gurion Airport are being detained if they can't provide bonds of up to $6,000. Mr. Kornichuk told reporters that Ukrainians saved the lives of many Jews during World War II and that Israel had a moral duty to help his people now. That's the latest BBC News.
And that's the news to the moment.
After a hard day's work, delicious comfort food is all we crave for. There at KFC, they've got you covered with a wide choice of delicious, finger-licking good meals from any of their 9 locations, including the Amazonia Mall at Providence. And there are 6 drive-through locations for your convenience. Their 11 herbs and spices are sure to blow those post-work vibes away every time. It's the perfect way to end a hard day. KFC.
It's finger-licking good.
To end the news, here's a recap of the highlights. The opposition APNU-AFC coalition is defending its desire to sit on the board of the Natural Resource Fund. 2 men will have to stand trial in the High Court for the murder of the Henry cousins in late 2022. And in the region, doctors are to determine the cause of death of several divers in an undersea crude oil pipeline in Trinidad. The news came to you compliments of KFC. It's finger-licking good.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.